Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to today's HDI webinar. We're so excited to have you join us for Move Forward by Shifting Left, Enabling Self-Service and First Level Resolution in 2021. I'm Megan Selva, Group Content Director for HDI, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We want to thank Hitachi ID for sponsoring today's presentation, and I do have a few housekeeping announcements before we begin. If you experience any technical problems, please refresh your browser. We encourage you to ask any questions at any time during our discussion by clicking on the Q&A tab in your BrightTalk window, and we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of today's presentation. Today's discussion will be available on demand shortly after the completion of this live event. You'll receive an email reminder once it becomes available, and you can also download the slides for today's presentation from the attachment tabs. You can connect with HDI on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn for news about upcoming events and resources. You can also join the conversation with other IT service and support professionals at connect.thinkhdi.com. And be sure to check out Spotcast, the single point of contact podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. I'm excited today to introduce your speakers. Richard Sikora has over 25 years experience in customer service and call center operations. He's managed both national and global operations and has been a speaker at industry conferences and user groups, leading participants in various best practices in the call center industry. Richard is currently Senior Manager for Support Operations at Blackbaud and is Lean Practitioner certified. He's also a volunteer and currently chair of Restart Career Development Program, assisting those in career transitions, and he helps connect participants' natural skills to jobs and careers they were built for with purpose. With more than 20 years of experience in the identity and access management field, Bruce McDonald is focused on both enterprise identity and privileged access management technologies. Having worked as a senior pre-sales engineer and project architect, his strength is in providing overall strategic direction and execution of corporate identity management programs on a variety of platforms. A results-oriented individual, Bruce enjoys solving new creative and technology challenges, and his value is in being able to understand complex technologies and provide strategic design direction, project recommendations, and thought leadership to customers and senior executives. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Richard.
All right, thank you, Megan, and thank you everybody for joining us today on this topic that I love to talk about, and appreciate everybody for tuning in. So, people often ask, how do I enable self-service? How do I reduce my first contact resolution, or FCR, in our support center? How do you get rid of those pesky password reset calls that come in? I've been around in, 9 to 11 different operations and throughout my career. And I tell you what, password resets probably the top 3 to 5 call driver case categorization drivers that have come in every single place that I've ever worked at. So, how do we get rid of that? Well, we're going to be talking about shift left. And when we talk about shift left and what that means, keep in mind, how does that pertain to password resets in your organization? So we're going to talk about what shift left is. We're going to talk about why would you actually do it? What's the ROI that you get out of it? How to actually shift left. Use a particular methodology or an approach to managing it. And then some key takeaways that I've learned over the last couple of years, actually. But before we do that, Megan, can we put up a poll here? I'd like to ask this question about if people know what shift left is.
Sure can. The poll's going to go live now, and it will be open for a minute. And I'll give a 10-second warning when the poll's about to close. To participate in the poll, by the way, just click on the polls tab beneath your active video window in your BrightTalk browser. All right, 10-second warning to get your votes in. All right, Looks like we have a fairly well-educated audience on shift left, with about two-thirds saying that they understand what shift left is about, and about one-third saying that they don't.
All right, thank you. That helps me to focus in on the conversation. So thank you everybody for giving me that feedback. So I will cover just the basics of shift left before we get into a little bit more of the ROI. But sounds like most of you understand that, when we talk about shift left, we're talking about um, where are those calls that are coming in, or your contacts coming in, where are they being resolved? Okay. Um, Call comes in, I'm a technician, I'm the level 1 support person. If I can't resolve it, I'll probably have to escalate that to my level 2 person, and so forth and so on. If it's a really complex issue, I might have to get an application developer in to help me resolve that. Now, as I start any company, in my level 1 organization, I'm probably starting at the bottom salary, right? At the entry level salary. And as I grow in my career, I should be getting more money because I'm getting more responsibilities, and I'll more likely be working on higher tier level of support. Throughout my career, I'll become an expert, so I'll probably be that sustained engineer or developer sitting at the level 3 mark. Well, as these cases are coming in and where they're resolved, as it goes up to the right from level 1 through level 3 and even beyond in some parts, the cost of that case increases exponentially as you have to move it from level to level. So the concept of shift left is, hey, why don't you take a look at what's going on and figure out why folks are contacting you in the first place? And is there anything you can do at your organizational level that will create a first contact resolution, or even better yet, as this green bubble shows, eliminate that call altogether and reduce the mean time to resolve, increasing your service levels. And by the way, you'd see a definite improvement in customer satisfaction. And as you resolve more cases in the left part of this graph, that's what shift left is. Your costs will go down. Bring visibility to where repetitive, costly issues and questions arise and resolve. That's basically what shift left is all about. However, you have to ask yourself, why would I want to shift left? Is there a reason why I should do that? Well, the first thing you need to do before you even decide if you want to do this, you have to look at the ROI of it. So, as an example, automated self-service tools are out there. Password reset is a great example. If you have to have your folks call in all the time or contact you to do a password reset, you have to have a human on the other side of that call in order to go ahead and go into the Active Directory and reset it and all that good stuff. But if you want to automate that, you're going to need servers, tools, processes in place in order to reduce or eliminate that call altogether for a password reset. But there's a cost to that, right? Nothing is free. You're going to have servers. You're going to have to buy the software, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the one area where people get really excited about a shift left opportunity. They've done their homework, and I'm going to show you what you should do for your homework in the coming slides. But then forget the one area is the cost of doing business with shifting left in a particular process. Is the cost of that actually outweigh the savings that I get in the reduction of those calls and where they get resolved at what tier? So just remember that you always have to look at the ROI when you take on and tackle a shift left process. And the other thing to remember is when you're shifting left, it's not just about reducing cost, although you're a financial person at your organization says, yes, it is. But it's also, you need to remember about the customer journey or the customer experience. What is their experience like as they're contacting you in the contact center? And, do you know your customers well enough so that you know how they want to get a hold of you? And I'll talk about in a minute. So remember, it's not just about a reduction for costs. It's improvement in opportunity, improvement in loyalty, customer satisfaction, and that customer journey. So Megan, let's open up the next poll. Just interested in this audience, if anybody has fielded an effective password reset process that has actually reduced volume in their organization.
Sure can. I'll be starting the poll now, and again, it will be open for 60 seconds. And again, to participate in the poll, just click on the Vote tab beneath your video window. All right, 10 more seconds. All right, thanks everyone for weighing in. Richard, it looks like 32% of people say they do have an effective password reset process, and about 60%, we've actually gone up to 40% to 60%. So 40% say yes, and 60% say no, they don't have an effective process.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for that. Okay, so for those of you who attended my session of Shift Left at the HCI conference, I brought along my friend Jerry. So Jerry might be familiar with you. But before we go on, I wanted to bring Jerry along for this conversation because your big, hairy, audacious goal, if you do set out to implement password reset, reduction opportunity, or any other opportunity that will reduce contacts and help with cost control and cost savings. Remember, when you shift left, that's an audacious goal, and Jerry will be there with you side by side. But just to make sure you understand, when you start a process, it's a long process, and this isn't something that will just take care of itself in 1 to 2 months. You're going to be in it for the long haul with Jerry, and I just want to emphasize that. Just to make sure that you're up for the challenge, and those who want to reduce costs and things of that nature, that you always want to make sure that you're planning out some long-term plans on this. So a lot of people say, well, where do I start? How do I do this? How can I enable this? And so I broke it down into a couple different sections. But the first thing you really need to know is, have you defined your overall goals and objectives? And so, are you just trying to reduce the contacts and or reduce cost? Perhaps it has nothing to do with cost, but you're just trying to increase the self-help options, and you really need to field out new tools for that because you want to go into that strategic part of your operation to increase self-help. Perhaps that the customers told you that they want that, right? And also, does your customer satisfaction scores, does that have anything to do with it? Which I think it should. You should always keep that in the back of your mind. So those are kind of some of the things that you want to ask yourself as you're getting into how to do this. Now, there's a couple ways of doing it. I'm going to talk about the IDEA method. It's very similar if you're into Lean and Six Sigma. There's the DMAIC process called define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. It's how you can run a project in under control and with some sort of non-chaotic fashion. I brought the IDEA method: identify, document, execute, and assess approach that we'll talk about today. So the first thing is to identify, and what that means is you need to understand why people are calling you in the first place. You got to collect the data and analyze why they are. The biggest thing, an area where you can go to is your case categorization. I mentioned in every operation that I've been in, Password Reset was probably the top 3 to 5, call drivers. And as you can imagine today, with even more and more technology that are out there, every single aspect of our work has a password that we have to protect, and change your password every 60 to 90 days, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a big area that we've seen, but we could only have known that because we've had good case categorization systems in place and that we had confidence in that data. A lot of people forget to just to review case history and to see why folks are calling in, and that could tell you a lot too. And those who have a robust KCS, uh, knowledge centric support, KB, knowledge based systems in place, just running some data on how many articles have been touched in different categories and areas can be a huge source of help if you have that in place. And so by doing this, you're going to start bucketing all your information of why these folks are contacting you. And it just so happens, in my work, we're actually going through this right now. We've identified, well, we identified 30 plus or more things, and then recently bucketed into a couple different categories of, okay, what can we really take on in 2021? And password resets is one of those things, which is kind of cool for us because we've got a lot of products and services, and we like to combine everything so that the customer experience is going to be better at the end of this. And we know this is going to take a year or so to do, but we're going through this process right now at my work, which is kind of interesting. The other thing of why they're contacting you, but how you should have an understanding of your different channels of how folks are contacting you. If you're more of that walk up type of place, social media, some people do engage in that, phone, chat, web, whatever the breakouts are. And the reason why you want to know how they contact you is you need to make sure that you do have the right tools available. Or if you're not sure, you want to provide a new channel of how they're going to contact you. You might want to do a focus group or a survey, and poll your folks to see what would they like to do. There's a lot of studies done over the last couple of years of how people are shifting more towards the, hey, I want to contact you, but I want to contact you on my time. I'm mobile, I'm more technology driven, so I want that the availability of better technology instead of just picking up the phone. So we're seeing those changes in the industry, and so it's always good to know why and how they're contacting you. And so as we talk, think about that. How would a password reset tool help a user? Put yourselves in their seat when you've had to change your password because you forgot what it is and you're trying to pay your cable bill, right? Can they get a better experience than what they have today? Those are kind of some of the questions you'll want to ask yourself. The next phase is you want to document. You have to document everything. You've got to document your milestones, your steps in the processes. You need to make sure that you have identified what your top goal is and what your end state is supposed to be. You also want to document your measures for success. You want to be able to go back and see, okay, this is where we were, and this is where we're at right now. Let's see how well we did, and we'll talk about measures of success in a couple minutes. But documentation, it will provide that visual path of where you need to go, and it'll give your project structure and prioritization. And we use the RACI model. And if you're not familiar with the RACI model, RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And you could look this up on the internet. This is just a screenshot that I found. And the reason why I picked this is because it's nice and colorful. But you can use any sort of template you'd like to use. Now, what this means is for each task that needs to happen, there should be only one person, one accountable to make sure that that task gets done. And then you might have one or two other people being the responsible people actually doing that work, but all the responsible people are, reporting back to the accountable person. The accountable person just making sure that the entire, organization or process is moving forward and we're not stalling. So it's a really good way of, especially when you have a project team, it's a really good way of assigning the roles and everybody is very clear of what they're supposed to do. Because the saying is, if you don't have an accountable person and everybody's responsible, then nothing gets done. And I've been in those type of positions before. So I strongly recommend using that RACI matrix as you are documenting your work. Then you get into your execute phase. So you've got your project plan up and running, and you're ready to just execute on this. And this execute phase, this could take, quite a while. It could take quite a while of, if let's say you are gonna, get yourself a password reset, you need to do your search of what the best tools that are out there, and what does that mean for our IT department? What kind of changes do they have to make? And I got to get them involved. And does this mean can I use my telephony system? Can I do it so maybe on my phone system that they can change their passwords that way? There's a whole array of which way this will go, but the accountable will make sure that they're driving this forward, and you're going to keep track of the milestones as you execute on your task. So, like I say, every operation is different, but this is how you would do it. You'd build the systems to capture the data. You would analyze that data and select the target, my lowest hanging fruit of these are the areas where I think I could shift left. And you also thinking about what's the areas I can shift left that I can actually field on the floor quicker, right? So get those quick wins, and then these other things like the process that we're going through is one of those things where it's going to be a longer type of process. So try to prioritize what you can do with the team size, and like I said, we we came up with 30 some things to that would identify as one of those shift left type of opportunities. We just don't have the bandwidth to do maybe 5 of them for 2021, right? So you're going to have to make some tough choices, and but your data will show that what's the best things to do going forward. Now, the last part of this process is assess. And again, you really need to identify, during this document phase, you really need to identify what does success look like. If I'm going to do this, what are those key areas, those key KPIs that I want to look at, that'll help me determine if this was successful or not, right? And the reason why you want to set that up front is because when you measure it for the first time, how it was before, that sets you up for a good benchmark. And so you don't change that benchmark. So when you start looking at the data after you've implemented a shift left process, you're looking at the same data, apples to apples, that it's not clouding the data, and it shows that you're doing well, or it's okay. It didn't reduce calls, but my CSAT went up 5%. Hey, maybe in the long run that actually, turns out into some sort of revenue opportunity. But whatever those metrics are that's appropriate for your area, make sure that you identify those up front. And then one of 3 things should happen: adjust, stay on course, or you close out this project. You're done, and then move on to the next thing. Right? So those are the actions that are going to happen once you get to your end results. But it's okay if you have to adjust. That happens sometimes. Sometimes the bar was set too low or too high, and you adjust and then move forward, and that's okay. So I had some key takeaways along my journey of shift left in my many years of process improvement, continuous improvement. along the way that I wanted to share. The first thing is Gitmo. I heard about this term a couple years ago from a leadership summit that I was at, and it means good enough to move on. And I don't know how many times I've been a part of a project team, and before you roll it out, and before you get everybody using XYZ, whatever that is, you keep adding more to it. You keep adding, oh, but we should have this. And then somebody goes, yeah, but what about if this and that happens? And you start getting into the weeds of stuff. It's that 80-20 rule. If you've got it up to an 80%, get it out there, you know, see how people react to it, adjust from there, and then move on. So Gitmo, good enough to move on. Know your end goal. Those folks that are helping you out, those people identified in the RACI on your project team, are you all aligned what your end goal is, and do they all know? Also, you might think and read the data that says, "Ooh, if we take care of this category of contacts coming in, that life will be great." But just make sure that you ask your peers, other leaders within your department, for their perspective and input. And perhaps even go beyond your department and ask others outside that your department that you interact with. Let others be part of this process and get their input into your shift left opportunities. Again, using the RACI model will keep you very organized with your priorities, your milestones, etc. Things change. Some of our goals changed in the middle of the year. So we set to do things out for 2020, but something like, let's see, COVID, it just got in the way, and we had to, pivot our goals somewhat to react to what was going on, and that's okay. But when you're using the RACI model and you've got this stuff documented, you're able to do so much more easily, be more flexible with that. Make sure you're bringing your entire team along for the journey. And so, like, if you've got a bunch of folks that are answering the phones and the walk-ups and things of that nature, you want them to understand what your journey is. What are you doing that's going to help them? It's that WIFM, what's in it for me. Always take them along for the journey. It's called change management. Let them know what you're doing, what projects you're working on, and why you're doing it, and the hopeful outcomes. We're trying to make your life easier so you don't have to take these pesky calls day in and day out. They'll love it. So make sure you take your journey along for that. Again, establish the measurements for success at the beginning of the project. And one of the big aha moments that I had is shift left beyond the support department. What I mean by that is, yeah, you have all this data of why folks are calling in. Password reset, that's a great one, because we took this information to our hosting folks and showed that, hey, we need to partner together, because this is a big area where we can have a huge win if we can come up with a better way of doing our password resets in a more self-sufficient way for the user. And they were like, yeah, this is interesting information. And so partner with the others for that continuous improvement. There might be some departments that are out there that have written code or configured something in a particular way that they had no idea that the effect of it downstream is that would cause contacts to come into your support center. And so that's why shift left used to be all about siloed in the support entity, but shift left beyond support, involve others and partner with others within your entire organization. And lastly, my last thing is, again, remember, Jerry's sitting right next to you. He's in the room. Shift left strategy is a multi-year project. And as long as you know that Jerry's going to be there with you, that you won't get frustrated just 4 or 5 months in, right? That that you'll be able to get with this, but it's just going to take a while to see those efforts. So that's a little bit about shift left and how you can enable self-service and such. And so that ends my part of it. So Bruce, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Super. Thanks very much, Richard. Okay, well, today we're going to talk, continuing on about self-service, and I think the first thing that people think about when they hear the term self-service, oh, you mean forgotten password reset, and while certainly that is a big part of it, it's not the only aspect of self-service. Self-service, as Richard illustrated in his slides, getting more and more over to the left. Let people fix things themselves. 100 people taking 5 minutes to resolve something is a whole lot cheaper than one person taking 500 minutes to resolve it. So there's a lot of other aspects of self-service. We're going to try to look at some of them today. But first of all, I think we should consider why. Why do we want to put in self-service? And certainly cost savings is a big driver. But reducing the fatigue, of your help desk operators. Imagine being on the help desk resetting passwords 8 hours a day. It's not exactly career-inducing. So you want to reduce the overall fatigue that you're subjecting your employees to. Redeploy them if they're not having to do a repeating job like resetting a password. You can deploy them to do more complex tasks. You can enhance the productivity of your users. They're not waiting for a help desk analyst to help them with something, and that in turn goes with being happier, employee happiness. People are generally happier if they can continue on with their job unhindered. We want to bridge the gap in between the business and the IT organizations. We'll talk more about that in just a second. And being able to access workflow approvals very quickly and through self-service portals. So self-service has two aspects, content and delivery. The content, what are we actually going to give you or empower the user to do? And of course, password reset, number one. But like I said, not the only ones. You have the ability to allow users to manage groups. Okay? Groups are a big part of our life today. If you're in a group, you have access to something. You might be an owner of a group. Groups have attributes. So you want to be able to manage those objects. Entitlement management. Hey, I need access to system X. Well, instead of calling the help desk and explaining it to them, put in a request directly through a portal and then subject that to a workflow authorization. Disk encryption. I might have a BitLocker or a McAfee type thing. That's a big problem if people can't remember that password. Again, you can deliver workflow approvals through a self-service interface and even administrative credentials. People are using PAM solutions, privileged access management solutions, more and more these days to control access to their most privileged accounts. You can utilize self-service to allow users to access them easier. The other aspect of self-service is delivery. How are we actually going to get it to the user and when? So pre and post login is an obvious one. If I have forgotten my password, it's usually before I even get to log in because I need my password to log in. So you have to make things available to the users when they need it. If I've got an access denied when I'm trying to click on a share or a printer, help me out then. I have my mobile. I have my tablet. So make it available then. That's how I want to access it. I don't have a network. I'm working at home. Okay, give me VPN access. I don't have a VPN. I don't have Wi-Fi, but I do have my telephone. Okay, then allow IVR, at least to give the user a password reset. So there's lots of different delivery mechanisms that are at play. Availability comes into the picture because self-service is really only useful when people can access it at the time they need it. So a good example I mentioned earlier about access denied. If I tried to click on a share and I got access denied, call your help desk. Well, I might give them a call. I might just put up with it. I might go and talk to a colleague and have them get it for me. But instead, if you give that user a prompt for remediation right at the time they have an access denied, then you can extend the self-service aspect to that user right at the time that they need it. Okay? Allowing password resets before they log in. Well, again, pretty straightforward. If I can't remember my password, that's when I need help. I need to have a button. I need to have something that allows me to reset that password right now, not later on. When the user's off-site, okay, as how many people are working from home now? Probably lots. So you have to be able to allow for password reset when the user is in an off-network condition. Again, launch a VPN automatically. Don't ask the user to do it. Just do it. We want to issue push notifications. So when there's an authorization request, don't wait till I happen to check my email. Push a notification right to my mobile and say, hey, Bruce, you need to approve Richard's access to such and such. Boom, I do it. So real-time notification is a big one. And group management, we're going to talk more about the groups in just a second, but it also has to be intuitive. It has to be accessible to the group owners as well as people who want to be members of it. So let's take an example here. Off-site password reset. I mentioned lots of people are in the situation where they are not working from, or they are working from home. They're not on the corporate network. We need to be able to fix the problem where they are currently logging in with a cached password. If they have a cached password value and they cannot remember what that password is, they're in a world of trouble. They could eventually have to bring their laptop back into the organization, into the corporate network to get it back online. So there are solutions out there that will allow you to fix that problem by launching a VPN connection automatically. Another big one is the full disk encryption problem. You have McAfee or BitLocker, Checkpoint, and so on. And when you first boot your computer up, it says enter your password. Well, if I can't remember my password at that point, what am I supposed to do? There's no interface on the system to be able to get a reset. So I take up my mobile phone, which we always have with us, right? And I connect into the system. I say, hey, that's Bruce, and I authenticate. I need an unlock code for my McAfee disk encryption. It gives me that key. I type it in. I'm back in business. I didn't have to call the help desk. I was able to get a reset of that disk encryption password all on my own. Now we get into self-service. One of the things that pops up, it's usually ugly head, is user adoption. It's only typically useful if you've registered. So when you have to register for a program and to be successful, there's generally two approaches, a carrot or a stick. Now the carrot approach is generally most desirable. Incent those users. Expound on the benefits of self-service and why it's such a good thing and why they should use it. But very often you'll find some users just ignore it. It's easier to just call the help desk. So we take the stick approach. Send them constant email reminders. Get in their face. Give them annoying pop-ups. Even lock out their desktop until they're registered. That's becoming a very, very popular choice. People log in immediately. If they're not registered, they're taken to a full screen point to register. So you have to be able to get your users into an adopted state, into a registered state, in order to get close to that 100% adoption. I talked earlier about group management. Again, groups are really the key element in most entitlement management these days. You have groups. If you're a member of some group, you have access to something. But the problem is that IT doesn't really understand the business reasons for a group. Who should be the owner? Who should be members? What the attributes should be? And business owners, they don't have the IT rights to be able to manage the groups. So we have a bit of a problem here. How do we allow one to manage the other? And the key is self-service. Push those CRUD operations back to the group owner. Let a group owner put in a self-service request to create a group, delete a group, make it change the membership of it, change the attributes of it, with or without workflow approvals. I might have to have somebody approve those changes to my group. But again, IT is not having to babysit this thing. Everything is done through a self-serve interface. and authentication. Authentication is extremely important when we talk about self-service. Now I don't have somebody on the phone saying, "Oh, it's you, Bruce. What can I do for you?" I am now proving my identity to the system, and wherever possible, we suggest using multi-factor authentication. I'm sure about everybody has heard of that by now. Something that you are, something that you have, something that you know. You also want to bring into the picture here adaptive authentication. That is to say, authentication that varies depending on the conditions. What time of day is it? What IP address are you coming from? What's your risk level? What do you have access to? These can all be factors that can influence the authentication challenge that is presented to a user, and that must be taken into account when you're designing a proper authentication structure. And finally, we talk about access to privileged accounts. PAM solutions are everywhere these days. People are putting all of their administrative credentials into a vault and then allowing controlled disclosure to use those accounts. The thing is, people that are normally used to just having access to their admin accounts, and suddenly you're taking it away and they have to go put in a request and have it approved and check out and so on and so forth, that gets to be a little bit of a pain. So you want to make that process as seamless as possible. Allow the user to have the minimal number of clicks to go from being authenticated into the system to working as administrator or whatever the account is that they need on the server that they're trying to get to. So bring federation into the picture. Allow users to be able to get federated access directly into the system and reduce the friction that is in conjunction with utilizing a PAM solution. So these are all just areas of self-service that we've talked about. I'm happy to answer any questions on them, and I'm going to direct this back over to Megan, and I'll let you take it from here.
All right, thank you so much. And just as a reminder for everyone, if you have any questions today for Bruce or Richard, just go ahead and pop them in the Q&A tab underneath the video window in your browser screen. But the first question we have for the both of you is about KCS. And really, is KCS the best knowledge management model for supporting shift left opportunities? If it's not, what would either of you recommend? And what are the other knowledge management frameworks out there that people should take a look at?
Yeah, this is Richard. Great question. So KCS in general is a very important part of a shift left strategy, in my opinion. We actually, at our work, did this 4 years ago. So, your KB database, it's not just an internal only type of system. It can be used also externally. Put the knowledge of power into your users and let them have access to it. And that's what we did. And Jerry will be in the room for this BHAG of a project, because it's a lot of work, because you have to make sure that your articles are written what's called the voice of the customer, so that it's not just a bunch of geek talk in an article, that a customer would type in a question the way the customer would, not just a technical person. And then there's some categorizations within your KB system where you want to make sure it's categorized correctly. That way the search engine is optimized for the best it can be. But yeah, I say KCS is an extremely important tool to use for shift left strategy. When we did this, I think about 4 years ago, we saw tens of thousands of usage in our articles go up, and an absolute call reduction that was amazing when we kicked it off in the first 6 months after we launched that. So that's the first thing. There are other things like community forums. So for example, that's like where a person can go and get peer-to-peer help. So a person, let's say, has one of our software products, and 1,000 other people are registered into this community forum. and a person comes along and says, maybe a new person that, hey, how do I do XYZ? They could just go ask that question out on the forum, out of the community group. And people, peers love to help each other out. And that's another form of shift left, where you have an area, a place where the folks who are using your products or services, they can go and they can ask themselves questions. So they've never once picked up the phone to contact you, and the peers are asking themselves the questions and getting them resolved and helping each other out. And that's a great, self-service, strategy. It's little cost involved to, maintain those types of websites, but and then we also actually link our KB search questions and things that nature's in within the communities as well. So that's another potential tool to use. And there's some other things out there that people like to use, social media in like Facebook groups and things of that nature, that you can have organized community forums, kind of like the online FAQ system.
Mhm. And do you think that people need to, how far do you think people need to invest in knowledge management? The whole enchilada of having knowledge managers and knowledge coaches and all of those things, or is it something that even a small support center could invest in and get mileage out of?
Yeah, no matter how big or small you are, you definitely can get mileage out of that. But what will also be different then is the amount of work that has to be done, right? So a very large scale organization will have, thousands and thousands of articles that they have to update and manage and maintain. Smaller organizations, it's mostly manageable by the scale of what's out there for the knowledge anyway. But yes, I think that any organization, small, medium, or large, can definitely take advantage of this. And it's scary because old school was that the knowledge articles are internal only, and you want people beyond our organization to know our questions. And the answer is, yeah, that's a strategy. Get that knowledge out there. And it's out there for us. As example, you don't even have to log in to get this knowledge. You can Google a particular question about Razor's Edge right from Google and get it without logging in. It has been very effective to get that knowledge out there to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no knowledge hoarding. Bruce, have you guys? I mean, you guys work with a broad cross section of industries and clients. Have you seen any clients with particularly novel approaches to knowledge that informs self-service?
Not, to be honest with you, not really, or at least not in my experience. Certainly social media is becoming more and more prevalent to enable campaigns. As companies introduce self-service technologies, they are turning to social media as a mechanism to get the word out more so than ever. But to say it's a real novel approach, nothing that I've actually come across that's earth-shattering. The big thing we recommend is to, when you put in self-service, is to customize the help notifications or the instruction sets to your users in your users' culture, and using terminology that is familiar to your users. Make the UI look like just another intranet page. You don't want people to be thinking that they have to go off to some foreign application to reset their password or unlock an account or get added to a group. You want it to appear as just familiarity, another place for them to go. So that's one of the a couple of points that we recommend to customers, and make sure that customers have a comfort level as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. So we have two questions that are sort of related, so I'll start with this one. So what would both of you say the top 3 shift left opportunities are in a help desk or service desk support organization setting, other than password reset?
Other than password reset? Well, I would say certainly one of them is the entitlement management. So whether that's groups or any other mechanism that I need access to X, and allow the user to make that request through an interface. That is a big one that people seem to have been very reluctant until the last few years to push out. They've relied instead very heavily on role-based structures and predictive mechanisms for determining what a user should have access to, as opposed to reactive. And we say, use both. You predict where possible, but you need to be able to allow users to just put in a request to say, hey, I need a particular level of access. Another area that is a big opportunity in self-service is managing the user lifecycle. So allowing users to put in requests. What's a good example? I'm getting married. My name needs to change. I need to initiate the change of a surname. Or I'm going to go on leave next week. I need to have somebody delegate all of my rights to somebody else. Or I'm handing in my termination notice, or whatever it might be. Things that apply to the user lifecycle are great candidates for self-service. Certainly, there'll be workflow approvals linked in with that, but you can let the users do the initiation of the event. And then finally, my third one would be the PAM, as I mentioned on my last slide, where you want to allow users to have very seamless, low-touch access into their privileged access environments through federation wherever possible.
And this is Richard. I will add one thing. It's not a category, but it's a process. So I've managed within my career, I've managed several pure help desks, and the process to make sure that if there is, as an example, an update that has to be pushed out, like if you're not testing these updates, if you're not validating these updates, you're going to have calls generate, or even if it doesn't actually cause any errors, but if the user interface changes, it will drive calls. So if our organizations would get those weekly Microsoft security updates and things that nature, or Outlook is changing, or something in another application is changing, that was controlled from our IT folks, where they tested it out first, they vetted it. There's processes in place on all the different types of laptops that we fielded to our end users. That is definitely a shift left, but it's not for a case categorization. That was a process put in place to reduce those types of calls proactively prior to any sort of computer software updates that went out.
Mm-hmm. So knowing that there are applications of shift left, beyond password resets, of course, there are a lot of organizations that are using multiple different tools and processes to manage those opportunities now. So you touched on change management at the end of your presentation, Richard. What are some tips for starting to consolidate your tools and processes into maybe a single self-service portal, a single knowledge base, a single solution? That's a lot of change to manage. It's a lot of new to orient people to. So what are some best practices there?
Yeah, I would say I would be interested in what Bruce has to say on these questions. Personally, it's going to depend on your size of organization, because as I said before, for those smaller type of organizations, you might not only be able to bite off one or two things for the year, and that's just because you also have to keep the lights on, right? You have your day in and day out numbers to meet and customers to support. But some other organizations who might have a little bit more bandwidth in terms of the people management side of it, it really comes down to what type of process change is this? Is this just a quick low-hanging fruit, more like a continuous improvement, or if am I making a huge change? Is your engine of what makes your your day go, day in and day out? Is that whole engine going to change? That means that's a very, very big type of change that's going to happen. It's going to, time, resources, and money is going to be impacted into how much you can do with that. That's how I, take that question. Bruce, what do you think?
Mhm. Well, the certainly the line has been getting blurred more and more over the last few years between the various self-serve environments. I mean, there would be password management, identity management, federation, privileged access management, and there used to be separate solutions for each one. And as what we've seen in recent years is that those different elements are becoming closer and closer related. People are looking for one solution. They want to have only one interface to learn. From an administrative perspective, I only want to know how to manage one environment, not four. So there's definitely been a shift to bringing the functionalities of the various products tighter and tighter together. And in fact, in our own suite of solutions, we promote, it's the power of one solution that does give you all of the different aspects. So we definitely are seeing customers that are paying less attention to the label on the product and more to what functionalities they want to craft the solution that they need today. So I think if that helps, just as far as the different types of environments.
Mm-hmm. Great. So Bruce, you touched on this a little in your presentation, but another great question here is, what are some successful ways both of you have motivated the rest of the organization to shift left, knowing that most people are comfortable doing what's comfortable for them? So how do you encourage people, the carrot, or discourage them, the stick, to step outside their comfort zone and be open to shift left opportunities?
Yeah, good question. There's certainly a lot of things that we have seen tried, everything from campaigns in the on posters in the lunchroom through to first department that's 100% registered gets lunch catered in. Those kind of things where you're crowdsourcing get all of accounts payable is registered except for Fred. Well, hey, everybody's going to go get on Fred and get him to complete so that the group can succeed. So there are some aspects of that that you can try. Certainly the stick approach, not as desirable, but there are lots of ways to force people to get into a registered or an adopted state. In fact, we've got papers that we have written on just on that subject to how you can force them. And a lot of it is nags. We've all had those annoying pop-ups, and we've all had times where you just need to get something done, and oh no, I have to put my PIN number in, or it has to send me a text, or it has to do such and such. There are annoyances because I haven't complied yet. So that's that's kind of where the both methods are valid, but we would obviously recommend carrot wherever. At least try the carrot approach first.
Mm-hmm. Richard, what about you?
The biggest thing for me is the carrot and stick in terms of getting folks on board is that I've seen work successfully is making sure that you, for whatever this change is that you're trying to do, make sure that you have executive sponsorship within your organization. So if you've got that top, executive leader who is like, kind of blesses it, approves it, and actually you might even make it part of your, your goals for the next year. I think that really helps to rally folks, because when you make changes like this, it's cross-departmental assets that you need and resources. It's not just, one department making a change. Got to work as a team. And I think by, involving executive leadership at the beginning and getting their buy-in, is, you now know, okay, this is a direction that not just a department, but as a company, we're going down this road. And that's where you get that buy-in. And I think that really helps getting people on board to do any sort of shift left opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, we are just a little bit past the 2:00 mark, so that's all we have time for today. There were several great questions remaining around intelligent swarming, KCS and knowledge management tools, and I encourage anyone who had unanswered questions, take these to Connect. This is a great place to ask your peers questions and get them to weigh in on the tools they're using, the things that they've found successful in their organizations, and that's organizations of all sizes. So again, highly recommend connect.thinkhdi.com. As a reminder, for today's presentation, the slides are available in the attachments tab below the video window. Thank you to everyone in the audience who joined us today and participated in the webinar. And I'd also like to thank Richard and Bruce for presenting and Hitachi ID for sponsoring today's event. We hope that you will join us next month on February 23rd for our next webinar, and we hope you have a great day.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.